Welcome to the Richard Lloyd USA YouTube channel. I'm Richard Lloyd. Today I'm going to be doing a video on a TP-Link WR940N router. Now this is a 100 megabit 2.4 gigahertz N Wi-Fi router. But it's an excellent little router, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be installing third-party firmware into the router called DD-WRT. Now, why would you want to install third-party firmware into your router? Well, in this case, the router is now end of life according to TP-Link, which means that they will no longer be updating the firmware. So you know what it is with the stock firmware, it's what it's going to be from now to the end of time. They're never going to give you an update on that router. And they say, well, basically, if you want new features, buy a new router. Well, in this case, I want new features, but I don't want to buy a new router, number one. Number two, if you have a version 4 of this router, this one's a version 3, but if you have a version 4, it has a vulnerability built into the stock firmware that allows it to be hacked. So if you have a version 4, then it's imperative that you get rid of the stock firmware and go with something else. Otherwise, don't use it, because if you do, you're vulnerable. So by installing DD-WRT into this router, that firmware from DD-WRT, open source, updated regularly, will fix that vulnerability, and then your router is good to go and you can use it on the internet. On top of that, you'll have all the features the router actually has, a whole bunch of new features that the stock firmware doesn't give you in the router that you can, experiment with if you wish. So we're going to install that into this version 3, and I'm going to show you how to do it. The first thing we need to do is go get some software on the internet. So I'm going to connect to the internet here. Okay, we're connected. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to open up a browser window here and go to the DD-WRT website. .com. There we go. So it's dd-wrt.com, and this is the front page, and basically very good website. It has a forum, wiki, documentation, frequently asked questions, all the support, all the information you could ever want to know about this router, about this firmware, including over here a demo page. So I'll just go click on that quickly, and the demo page will show you what the router firmware looks like and how it functions, so you can go through the tabs and see what's going on, like setup, wireless, so on and so forth. So that's handy if you want to see what it's going to look like when you're done. I'm going to close that out. And so what we're going to need here is to go get the firmware for this router. So here we go to the router database. And, well, I did click on it. Let's see. Oh, I'm going to hit OK on this too. There we go. So let's go here. Okay, so it was a little slow. So go to the router database and go to, we'll type in our router, which is the WR940N. And it will update and show you all the TP-Link routers with that name on it, all right? So they have a version 2 here, but that's a work in progress. So if you have a version 2, you're gonna have to wait for that till that's green. There's no firmware for the second one, but there's firmware for the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th version of this. And I do believe they went all the way to a version 11 with the TP-Link, but DD-WRT is only compatible from 2 to 6, well actually currently 3 to 6 versions of this router. I have a version 3, and if you have a 4, there's the 4 for you, and you definitely go get that. But all the others, you can keep the stock firmware and keep running it, because there's no current vulnerabilities that have been found on any of it. But in the future, there could be, right? So I'm going to go to the 3rd one. Once you go here, you'll see that there's 3 files here to download to make this happen. So we're going to get all 3 of them. Actually, only 2 of them actually convert the router to DD-WRT. The top one, the web revert file, converts it back. So not only can you put it on this router, you can take it off with one of these files as well. So we're going to get all 3. We'll go with the web revert. I'll put it in here in my save file folder in my downloads. And yeah, I've already downloaded it once, but I'm downloading it again. Again, put it in someplace like, your download directory, and put everything in the same directory to make life, simple for you. Just a suggestion. I mean, you can save them wherever you want, but this is how I do it. Then we're going to get factory to DD-WRT bin, again, same directory, WR940N version 3, and save it there. And yeah, I'm going to replace it. You won't have to do that. And then the Webflash bin file, again, same place. Save it, and yeah, I'm going to replace it. So you can tell I've been here before. So there's the 3 files. Now, you may wonder, well, where are the updates at? Well, if you want to see the updates, you go to Other Downloads here, and then you go to Betas. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things to go looking through. I mean, this is a vast website, but if you go to Betas and scroll down to the latest, you will see the latest firmware. Here, I'm just going to do a Control F and type in WR940N. And you can see, there it is, right? So click on that, and you will see the 3 files, well, actually 2 files that make it happen. There is no web revert here because they don't update that one. Here is the 2 latest files, and the current version of this that we're looking at here. Let's go back to betas again. And 2025. That lists all the versions that have been made this year. I mean, you can see there's a lot of revisions. All right. And you would be the latest would be this down here, the R62606. Now, I've tested the latest 2 versions of this firmware. It does not work well on this router. Actually, this one here will put this router into a boot loop. So basically, these are beta firmware, and sometimes there's a bug. This one here, the 540, will cause it to not display correctly in Firefox. So the latest that I would recommend going to is this R62508. But the stock one that you see on the web page when you first go in is perfectly fine. And that, yeah, it's older, but I mean, you can experiment with this. I will put a link up here at the top for the rescue procedure for this router in case you do put it into a boot loop. That link will show you how to revert it back to stock, even if it is in a boot loop. It will also show you how to put the correct firmware file into this stock firmware file into this router so that you can actually do this video. If you have the latest firmware file from the TP-Link website, the US website, what will happen if you run it is you'll get this upgrade unsuccessful because the version of the upgraded file was incorrect. Please check the file name. Well, the latest 3 versions of the stock firmware from TP-Link are locked. They lock the firmware so that you can only use TP-Link firmware to upgrade. And you can't even use old TP-Link firmware to upgrade these 3 files or 2 files that are on the US website. It's locked right out. They only want you using their firmware. And that's kind of not cool because, hey, if I have a version 4, I can't upgrade it to something that's stable or secure, right? So in my video, that one I linked earlier up top, and I will put it at the end of a card at the end of the video, also in the video description below, I'll put a link to it as well. It will show you how to revert this router to stock firmware that will allow you to install third-party firmware. Pretty cool. And I'm assuming that you've watched that already and know how to do that. If you do not, like I said, you might get lucky and you might have old firmware in your router that allows you to do it. That's not locked. Okay. So let's go here back to our firmware. So this is where basically, let's go back here. Okay. So this is where all the firmware that, is beta is situated, right? So you got a lot to play with here. So, but what we're going to do is go back to the stock firmware that is on the web page, right? And use that. Okay. So, I don't need to play around with firmware that is beta. And I don't want to show you that anyway. The stock firmware that you get from the router database on DD-WRT is perfectly fine, right? So let's go to the router over here. I'm going to go to, and I'll put this document here. You see that the default TP-Link firmware address is 192.168.0.1. There's the default password. and so on. So, oh, okay. So, oops, I don't want to do that. I want to undo that. Copy it. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So I'm gonna minimize this and this. And basically what we need to do first is connect this router to your computer. And the way we're gonna do it is with an Ethernet cable. Don't ever flash a router through Wi-Fi. That's a risky behavior, and it may end up, bricking your router, which basically means it will be non-functional. But again, that video I link will actually be able to fix that for you. Okay, so we're going to Ethernet cable. We're going to plug it into one of the orange ports. Any one of the 4 orange ports will do. Those are the LAN ports. We're not using the blue port for that. Also note the reset button here, because you basically, what I do before I do any flash to this router, I always do a reset on it. So we'll be doing that. And that clears everything that's in it to the factory settings, which are the most compatible for the DD-WRT firmware. Next, we're going to plug the other side of that cable to the back of your computer into an Ethernet port. And if your computer does not have an Ethernet port, you can buy a USB dongle like this, which will give you gigabit Ethernet through a USB 3 connection. If you don't have a standard USB port, you have USB-C, then this is also a convertible connector. You can see that has USB-C as well. And you can buy these in dedicated USB-A and C if you don't want the conversion, right? You'd be surprised how handy that is. I use these in all my laptops now because I find it's just easier to plug into, and they're actually very fast. So we got the connection here. We got this all set up. And next thing we're going to do is get to the back of the router and hold down the reset button for probably about 15 seconds, I believe. So we're going to reset the router. Let's see if you can see that. So I'm going to do it right now. Hold down the reset while it's powered up and booted up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There you go. 8, 9, 10. All right, so that'll reset the router. I'll pick this up once it's done rebooting, and then we'll continue on. Okay, the router's reset and rebooted, and I'm going to open up a new tab here. Oh yeah, and I'm connected to my network through Wi-Fi right now. We don't want to be connected to anything but the router itself physically, which we are right now. So I'm going to disconnect from Wi-Fi, which makes basically me isolated to the router, connected to my computer only. So here we're going to put in the IP address. Again, I'll put the information that I got here from my notepad. So copy that, and we'll put it in. There we go. And there we are, right there. There's the router, admin. So admin. So the username is admin, the password is admin, all lowercase. Log in. Hit exit on this. You can see we're into the router, and this is the firmware right here that I'm using. It's the 150206 revision, and that's, again, that video I put up. We'll end up putting this firmware on the router for you. Watch that video if you don't have the correct firmware to make this happen. Here we're going to go to System Tools, and then we're going to go to Firmware Upgrade. And then we're going to hit Browse. Go to the download directory, WR940N, where I put all these files. And I'll show you how to revert it back to after we install DD-WRT. So we're going to go to the factory-to-DDWRT bin file and hit Open. Now this is the first file. There's 2 files to this whole upgrade. So we're going to hit Upgrade on this. And then hit OK. And you can see that it is actually doing the firmware upgrade. Now, if you fail here and you get this locked screen, then you have the wrong firmware in your router. Again, go back, hit the link to flash the right firmware into this router, or basically it's the same procedure as taking it back from stock, or taking it back to stock, or fixing it from a boot loop or some sort of catastrophic situation. Again, that link will be in the end of the video, on a card at the top of the video, and in the video description. I'll wait for this to reboot and I'll pick it up after that's done. All right, once you see this, it's probably ready to go. In my case, it will look like that. All right, physically connected to it still. So we're going to go to the IP address of the router with DD-WRT, and you can see here the default address for that is 192.168.1.1. So I'm going to copy that, paste it in here. And there's DD-WRT. Now this is a preliminary flash. We have to do the final flash. So we're going to put a username in here. I'm going to use admin, just to keep it simple. Put a password that's appropriate, that you will remember, and watch out for the caps lock key. That'll mess you up. But again, if you screw up this router right now, all you got to do is hold the reset button down like I just showed you, and that will return it back to this page on DD-WRT. It won't revert it back to the stock firmware though. So here we're going to hit change password. There we are. We're on the system information page. You can see here that it is a TL-WR940N V3. Wait a second. This is a 940N and it's not in a version 3. Well, yeah, this version here of the router is exactly the same as the 940N version 3. It's weird, right? So we're going to go to administration here, and it's of course going to ask us to log in again because we changed the password. So admin, put the password you just put into it, you hit sign in. Okay, so here we're going to go to firmware upgrade. I'm going to finish the upgrade, and that is, we did the factory to DD-WRT bin file. Now we're going to do the Webflash bin file here. Okay, so hit open, upgrade, and again, I'll pick this up after this is done doing this. It's flash upgrade. It will take about a couple of minutes, so I'll cut to it when it's done. All right, I believe it's ready here. There we go. Came right back. So now we've got a finished DD-WRT flash on this router, and it's functioning just fine. As I can see here, you can look through the tabs, but I'll give you a quick run through on how to set this up. Here we're going to go to the time zone, and I always change it to my time zone to keep the time correct on the router. And hit, so I'm in US Central, I'm in Texas, so hit save, and then hit apply settings. You got to apply the settings when you do this. Here we're going to go to wireless. This is something about, oh yeah, okay. I got to wait for it. There we go. There we go. Just try again. It was resetting itself after that setting change. You can see here the wireless settings. Now, you can play with these settings. I find the wide 40 megahertz to be faster than any other setting, so I'm just going to choose that. And then you can play with mixed or N only. Now, if you only want to connect at 2.4 gigahertz, then leave it here. But I'm going to leave it on mixed just for compatibility's sake. So save, apply settings. And here we're going to go to wireless security. This is important, really important coming to this place because you can see the security mode is disabled. So basically the Wi-Fi on this router is currently wide open. So you want to come in here and change this quickly. We're going to go to WPA, security mode, WPA2, and CCMP-128 AES is the most secure and the only setting you should use here. You may want to use for compatibility. If this doesn't work for you, you can use WPA personal, which is okay, but this is the best setting. So I'm going to choose that, save, and apply settings. Oh yes, thank you. We got to put a password in for the Wi-Fi connection. So you have the SSID, which is the name of the Wi-Fi connection, and you have the password or WPA shared key. I'm going to put one in here. There we go, and we'll test all this, and then hit save, and apply the setting again. And now you've got a password on your Wi-Fi, and then the only way to get into this is to have the password. So back here to basic settings, you can see here that the wireless name is DD-WRT. So if I go over here, and you can see right now that my network connection is reconnecting. So when sometimes when you reset these settings, the router reboots or resets itself. So be patient with that once you set a setting. So I'll wait for that to flash in. And you have a whole bunch of things here like services, still rebooting. And again, if you don't know what this stuff is, just basically go through it, go to the website. It'll show you all sorts of stuff. NatQoS. If you know what this is, you know what these things do. Here's another thing here. I like to see this under the administration tab and management. I like to check off this info site protection because I don't want the router to advertise what it is to anybody who goes to the web page for the router. You'd rather just say, hey, if you don't have a username and password, you shouldn't be seeing any of this. So if you click on that, go down here to save. I think we're back up. And then apply. Yeah, we're like, if it's cycling through, we're on. This is good. It's currently not connected to the internet. That's, kind of the issue there. No internet access. But, here, I'll fix that. I'll plug it into my network and that'll give it internet access. You would plug in your modem into this. Same difference. It gets you on the internet. There we go. And let's go here. Okay, so we've got that set up. Wireless is set up. Let's go test the wireless here. So we open this up, go to Wi-Fi, turn it on, list it, and it connects to my network. Obviously, let's take another look at that. There we go. There's DD-WRT. We're going to connect to that. Okay, so I'm going to do that again and pretend I've never connected to it before. So it'll show up. We're going to click on it. We're going to click on connect. Of course, it's going to ask you for your password. So here I'm going to put my password in. There we go. And then click next. And we're connected to it. Now, I'm going to disconnect the LAN cable from it. There we go. And you saw that network icon change there. And you can see now that we can still look through it, no problem, because we're connected to it through Wi-Fi. So that's a quick and dirty setup for the router. It's completely running right now. Next thing you may want to do, and I'm going to connect it back to LAN, because anything you want to do with this router, you don't want to do it with Wi-Fi. In other words, you don't want to flash this router with Wi-Fi. You can configure it all you want with Wi-Fi, but you don't want to flash it with Wi-Fi. So there, I'm connected again to it. Yeah, and it's working, right? Let's go to, Fort Worth is my favorite. Click the go on this and hit allow on that. And like I said, this is a 100 megabit router. So you can't expect to get more than 100 megabits on the internet on a 100 megabit router. The interface, like the Ethernet ports, will not give you any more speed than that. So at 94, we're pretty good. Okay, so we're on it. Let's go back to the router. And I'm going to show you how to update the firmware. So firmware upgrade here. There we go. And again, same thing as flashing the router in the first place. I'm going to browse here. And I will show you how to revert it as well. I guess we got to get firmware to do this. So let's go do that at the DD-WRT webpage. So back to the router database. Put in WR940N. And, we get all this, but we want to go to other downloads. And go to betas. And we're going to update it to something in this year. That firmware that we installed in this thing was from 2020, but it's perfectly fine. It's just older firmware. And you'll see a few differences here. Again, don't use these last two. The 62540 and the 62606 will not work correctly. So we're going to go to the R62508. And here we're going to just Control F to find the firmware, and you can see that I already have it in there, WR940N. And there it is. Goes right to my version 3. Choose whatever version is correct for you. We're going with 3. And we're going to choose the factory to DD-WRT bin. Actually, we only need the second file, but we'll take them both, because we're not converting this from stock at this point. I'll put it here. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it R5. What is it? 62508. Again, experiment with this. You can always, like, if it messes up, you can always go back and use those my other video to return it back to stock and start again. So you're always safe. Okay, so there, we created the folder. We're dropping that in there, and we're dropping this one in there. There we go. And again, you know, you don't need both of them, but I just always take both, because in the future I may be going from stock to that version. So back to the router, choose browse. Now we have the folder with the firmware. We're going to choose the second file, not the Webflash bin. Click open, upgrade. And I'll pick this up after it's done doing its flashing thing, and I'll show you what happened. When it's done, it comes back to this web page. So I'm just going to close out the browser here and open it up again. New private window. And back to 192.168.1.1. And of course, it's going to ask us. And notice this time, and this is why I did this, it doesn't show you the information page prior to logging in. So, you know, anybody who wants to hack this router is going to be looking at it and going, well, what is it? Right, exactly. You don't give any information about your hardware out freely, right? So, again, at this point, that little check mark I put at the end to protect the info site, obviously working. Log into it. There we go. And go to administration. When you do a firmware upgrade, it will keep all your old settings from your old firmware. So there's no problem there. You can, when you do a firmware update, choose this drop down and reset the factory defaults at the same time. But I never do. It keeps the settings. So your wireless settings are all good. You know, everything's still working over here. It's on 40 megahertz, like we set it. Now, you'll notice a slight difference here. You can see that we have save button and a save and apply button. So instead of having to save and then apply, you can just hit the green button and it does both at the same time. Pretty cool, right? So you have the option to save and you have the option to save and apply at one time. Now, why would you want to have two different buttons? Well, let's say you want to do 14 configuration changes and you don't want the router to reboot every time you do that. You just save all those configuration settings, and when it's done, then you hit save and apply, and then the router applies them and probably will reboot, and then, you know, off we go. Over here on status and up here, you can see that we are on R62508, right? And that was the 11/2/25. That's how recent this firmware is. So, you know, they upgraded on a regular basis. But on the last two upgrades that I showed you, the 540 and the 606, those are defective. They don't work well. So avoid those and wait for the next one to try again. So, you know, it happens. That's beta software, right? But this was perfectly fine. It works great. Last thing we're going to do here is, well, Richard, I don't like it. I want to go back to the stock firmware. You know, this is how you do that. We're going to go to the folder where we put the web revert file, which is under downloads, and the WR940. You can see here it's a web revert file. This is a compressed file. RAR are like zip files. They're compressed. So just right-click it and choose extract all, and just go with the defaults. There we go. Now it will create a folder, a subfolder, this folder here, web revert, and inside that will be the web revert bin file. That will take it back to stock. So let's do that to finish up this video. And at this point, there we go. And we're going to go to the web revert folder that we just created. Click that file, that web revert bin, open, and then just hit upgrade. Now, not all DD-WRT Firmware has this file on it. And as you saw in the updates in the beta, they don't put it there. So the place to go find that is on the DD-WRT website. Find your router, and the default firmware that they show there, will, at least for this router, will have the web revert file there, as I showed you where to get it in the beginning. So that's pretty cool. My Netgear routers don't have that functionality, but this TP-Link does. I don't know if they all do, but this one does. And it's very handy and cool thing to have, especially if you're experimenting with the router and you know, you want to maybe put OpenWRT on it. Easy to take it back to stock, put OpenWRT back on it, and then off you go. OpenWRT is another third-party firmware, and I may do a video on that for this in the future. Okay, I'll take this up when it's done rebooting. Okay, so it's done rebooting, and you see this unable to connect screen, which is perfectly normal because it's no longer on 192.168.1.1. The default IP address for the TP-Link router is going to be 192.168.0.1 right here. So I'm just going to copy that, copy it, and paste it in here. There you go. Hit enter. And there's the admin page for the router. So admin, oops, let's do that right. Admin, and enter. And then we're back. Isn't that completely so cool? And this one is using 1503.12 version of our build, which is perfectly good. You can go from this to System Tools and do a firmware upgrade to whatever you wish to firmware upgrade to, including TP-Link firmware. You know, once you put the locked version of the firmware from the TP-Link website, which I believe is the last 3 versions of the firmware, then you can't do the web revert on it anymore. You got to go to that first video I showed you, or link to, that takes it back. So basically that's it for my video. All right, that's how you take this router from stock firmware to DD-WRT and configure it. That's it for my video. If you like this video and it helped you out in some way, do me a big favor and give me a like, give me a thumbs up on the video. That helps my channel grow on YouTube, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Also, comment section below, put your comments, questions, anything you want to say to me in the comment section. I review them daily, and I answer them usually daily as well, and I appreciate them as well. And if you have any video suggestions, hey, put them in the comment section. I love those as well. I don't always do them, but I will review your requests and see if I think it's a viable video, and if it is, I will answer it. Also, any questions you have, sometimes I answer those questions with videos as well, because sometimes it's easier to show you how to do something or how to answer the question with a video as opposed to just typing in a book-long text as a reply. And plus, when I make a video answering your question, I answer everybody else who actually asked the same question. So again, appreciate everything you put into the comments section. Really, really do. Also, if you want to see more of my content, do me another big favor. Subscribe to my channel. As part of the process, hit the bell icon. That'll notify you every time I put a new video up, and then you can watch it at your own leisure. Once again, like always, I really appreciate you watching and supporting my efforts here. Stay healthy, stay happy, and we'll see you on the next video.